So, each country has its own piece of culture, and each piece of culture is unique to each country. Something that I'm going to talk about today is the kilt, because I'm Scottish. Surprise! um, so, a kilt is made from something called a tartan. What is a tartan? A tartan is a piece of cloth. Essentially, it's woven out of wool. It was adopted in the in the 1700s, and it was a symbol of pride for a clan in Scotland. Um, Essentially, it was a 5 meter long piece of cloth. It normally had a specific pattern, which is actually the tartan. The tartan is the pattern, not the piece of cloth. Um, but the tartan has two patterns, one going vertical, one going horizontal, and the difference between a tartan and plaid is one pattern going this way and one pattern going that way, and tartan is the same on both ends. I don't know why I felt the need to switch my hands to show you the difference, but there you go, a visualization for you. Normally the tartan was set on a colored background, and as I said before, it was originated in Scotland in the 1700s up in the Highlands. It was actually first mentioned in 1538. And originally, because you needed to kind of identify from a distance and see which clan was who and what was going on or who you were fighting, the patterns were colored. And so they would use natural dyes like berries and things like that they could get around them to dye the cloth. With a kilt, essentially, they will take the 5 meter long piece of cloth and they will wrap it around themselves. So all of the pleats they used to do by hand. Now we'll have different areas where you can stitch them, or it makes it easy for you, but they used to hand wrap them every day, and sometimes they would throw them over their shoulders. It would be like a coat. It was a very versatile piece of clothing. It was worn with extra pieces like a sporran, which is a really small little brown bag you would see with a little tassel hanging off the side, a kilt pin to hold the kilt together, as I said before, if they put it around their shoulders or just to tie at or to pin at their waist, and something called a scian-dubh, which is a small dagger that they actually had in their sock because they wore high knee socks. And this piece of clothing, as I said before, originated in the Scottish clans. Now, a Scottish clan was established in the 12th century, again, mainly in the Highlands, and it was a cluster of families or a family group. So you were either born into this clan or you were brought in by blood. That would be if you were born into the clan. You would be brought in by marriage, or if one clan went essentially and raided another village and took you hostage, you could be part of the clan in some form. Really, the clan system only lasted until about 1746, which was when the Jacobite Rebellion was crushed by King George's troops. But the history of the kilt and the history of the clans is still really strong. We just took a trip to Edinburgh in August, which was my first time visiting Scotland, but it's still very prevalent. It's a really big part of the history, and it's really funny because in all of the shops you have the little books that I actually got and brought home with me that explain the different clans and who you're a part of and things like that. I'm actually part of two different clans from my mom and my dad's side, but my biggest clan is McKay, and so I learned a little bit about my history and my culture, which is really cool because the clans themselves aren't really around today, but the clans and the kilts are still a big deal because the history is so strong there and it's so strong within the people. It's funny because there's a lot of history behind a kilt, and some of it isn't even true. There's 3 different countries that actually claim that they invented the kilt, which is Ireland, England, and Scotland. And there's also a myth that it was part of the medieval dress, which is also, I guess, sort of true, but not really true, because when I think medieval, it's for sure a time period, but it's not what they're referring to. The kilt was a Highland piece of clothing. And it's definitely still, the kilt itself is relevant today because it's still a formal piece of Scottish clothing that's worn at events like weddings or they have this thing called the Highland Games, and they wear them there. And the Silding, which is a musical or a music festival. And so it's just a relevant piece of history today that I think is still really important.